The exhibition came about when we were invited by the Global Gender and Climate Change Organization in 2008. And they had a big agenda for the climate talks in Copenhagen and decided to actually spend their marketing money on an exhibition.
We just opened this exhibition here in Los Angeles. The opening was amazing because people really responding to it. A very three-dimensional exhibition and a central exhibition because you don't only see pictures on the wall, but you feel, you hear.
When we were first approached, we learned a lot about how women actually, on the one hand, suffer more from climate change, but also harbor the knowledge to counter climate change.
With this exhibition, we don't only want to sensitize towards environmental issues and contribute to a certain positive change. We also want to practice what we preach by not transporting too much works, by not flying in all the artists, but only the artists who really have to be here because they have to do a performance or because they have to install their work.
I saw a lot of people at the opening wandering around, looking at the work, taking it in from different angles, coming up to us, asking us questions, reading the text, and I just saw a lot of thoughtful and also happy faces, and so I think I'm very confident that we reached sort of our goal or what we set out to do.
The original artist group were 8 artists from all over the world, including Abeles. She is an artist based in Los Angeles, and she was part in Copenhagen, in Mexico, and right now for Los Angeles she created a new work, a huge video wall.
I'm really familiar with the outreach that Artport does with the exhibitions as a way to bring dialogue about the environment. And so when they asked me to be part of the show, I was very eager to sort of take the challenge. Made me want to make a big statement. Most of my work is about air pollution, and for this project I really wanted to deal with the issue of water. I usually start my work with a lot of reading and research, and there was one fact that really kept coming back to me, and it was that in many parts of the world, women carry water for their communities and their families for 6 hours a day. And so the videos became pairs with one in real time and one slowed down to 1 minute equaling 6 hours, which is painfully slow. It's so slow you might miss that it's changing unless you were really spending time with the piece. There's a drawing of a little apartment in the piece, and I think that was to really kind of draw a personal connection for people. Art gives this entry into a subject that's rather scary and seems a little bit hopeless. So somehow the art needs to leap to that next place where people are allowed this space to really consider it and then move forward, hopefully, with the different ways that they interact with their worlds.
Insa Winkler, she is an eco-artist from Germany. The sculpture, as we can see in the back on the wall with the shadow, it's the shape of an African woman carrying a water jug. She created this water sculpture with EM ceramics. These are specific ceramic pills. You put them into a jug of water. You clean the water for 12 hours and then you can drink it. So you don't need big filters and big machines to clean the water, and they can use it even in Africa. It's proof that it works. So this is not only a beautiful art piece, but it proposes also a solution.
Here we have a work called Table. It is a table which is attached to 4 empty buckets, and these buckets are kind of floating within larger buckets that are filled with water. In the 90s, Sigmund took a table like that and let it float into a river in Iceland. And he did that against the backdrop of a glacier, and he saw pieces of the glaciers falling down. So this is a very poetic imagery and kind of speaks for the premonition of the artist of what was yet to come. I mean, this was before people were really talking about climate change. The show here in Los Angeles also features new artists, and in particular a few Swiss artists that weren't in Copenhagen. That is because we're working with a couple of Swiss organizations, Swiss Next and the Swiss Arts Council. So we invited Ursula Scherer, who is a video artist, internationally renowned. Tonight she's going to premiere her work called Rewrite, which is a very interesting work in that it involves clay. She's writing in the clay with needles, and the whole thing was going to be filmed from below and projected onto the wall.
So the theme of the show is climate change and gender, and I feel this piece works really well in this context as the fragility of the earth as much as me as a female artist and being. I write into clay, and clay is, for me, Mother Earth. And that together with the light, which is maybe a little bit more the male side, the first light is the sun. So it's like the sun and the earth coming together in this piece. Often in a performance, I write down what grabs my mind, what actually goes in and comes back out. So it's like I'm just a channel for certain words or certain thoughts. It's all about the process of change, the whole piece. The change in the writing, I will write and cross things out. I will write and erase. And in the end, there's this whole collage of writing on top of each other. It's a two-part piece. The performance is kind of showing what the process is of the video in the installation. I will place the glass shards into the installation itself. I lean in against the wall. The clay, after time, will slowly start to break down and fall to the floor and crumble back to the earth. So it's kind of the whole cycle of things.
We have a work here by Shubhankar Banerjee, who is an artist, writer, and activist. We have two large-scale photographs. They are aerial views of female pregnant caribous who are crossing frozen rivers. And the photographs really show the hardship of the Gwich'in people who live from these animals. What's happening through climate change is that these rivers are no longer frozen, so the female caribous cannot reach the plains for calving and die along the way. That's also affecting the life of the Gwich'in and basically taking away their livelihood. The video is showing Sarah Agnes James, who is an activist and elder from the Gwich'in people, and we invited her to come to Copenhagen and speak about her life, about her people during the exhibition.
Anita Glasser is an artist from New York. She did that video piece in La Paz, Bolivia, where she spent some time. It's a two-channel video where she is juxtaposing bucolic paradise scenes with despairing hell scenes. It's a metaphorical work showing reality of Latin American women who have to fight against the effects of climate change. It's getting more and more difficult to fetch water, more and more difficult to plant seeds, etc. And she is juxtaposing these two realities because, of course, they are living in a certain paradise as well. They have been living there in form of very poetic and colorful images.
So also in the show we have this work by Aqaba, who is an artist from Benin. When we asked him to do a work for our exhibition, he went back to his hometown, Cotonou, which is very heavily polluted. And so what he did is he invited women to wipe the faces of taxi drivers on motorbikes. And because of the pollution, their faces are really covered in smog. So you can see these white linen towels with the imprint of the faces of these taxi drivers. What's even more interesting is that these women often actually are the ones smuggling the illegal petrol across the borders, so they're exposing themselves to hardship as well.
Yes, and then we have the wonderful work of Charlie Case. The work is called Atomic Tree. Charlie Case is from Belgium, but actually he's a nomad and he spends a lot of time during the year in Mali, in Central Africa, living there with the families, working there with local artists. He's talking in this work about what big multinational companies are doing to a lot of African countries by exploiting them regarding oil drilling. And he's talking, of course, of the effects of this, of desertification, which means that a lot of people have to flee from their countries because they can't find nutrition anymore, they can't plant because they don't have water. Women have to walk miles and miles to fetch water. That is what is shown on the curtain as well. The video projection we see is talking about a dead tree in the desert where black liquid, as a metaphor for oil, is coming out of the tree. So it's a very poetic work talking about an African reality.
George Simon's work is about these shamanic women who have an unbelievable, actually scientific knowledge, which is being lost when these women die because the young people are not interested anymore. So he's really working to counter that and to save that knowledge.
It's a narrative installation actually based on a 10-year work process I did in the Republic of Komi, and it's very much related to questions of sustainable forestry. It's actually an artistic research project, and it has 3 chapters. One is about the local knowledge of women. The healing plants here on that table, they all were given to me from shamanistic women. Through that and out of that actually there is a second chapter. It's a kind of a vision, which is a sculptural intervention in form of a building. We initiated that in this area because there's an incredible lack of infrastructure for accommodation, for training of foresters, for instance, or for people gathering for cultural activities. And then there are photographs, all from pristine forests. However, they have a little special aesthetic because they're rather blue in the tone. That all refers to one of the plants I use very much in my work, which is blueberry. I use it because it's a healing plant for eyes. And I use it as a metaphor because actually I'm convinced that we are living in a crisis of perception, and of course the profession of artist is about perception. So I use blueberries as an indicator to see better in a metaphoric way. I'm a concerned artist, and through this concern and my awareness, I'm very much interested in what is going on. What is my responsibility and my contribution as an artist towards all these very critical things we are now confronted with? I would hope that the audience would get awareness about interconnectedness, about mindfulness, and about the relation of things in nature, with humans, with cultural structures. So if that would be communicated to the public here in Los Angeles, that would be, of course, fantastic.
We also have the work Unforeseen by Frances Whitehead, an American artist. And she did a video of what she calls women scientist heroes. Primarily, she's showing Lydia Rodina, who was a scientist and who basically starved herself to death during the siege of Leningrad to save some very important seeds. It's the video showing these women scientists, community leaders and organizers, and how their work has contributed to reverse climate change and to help communities around the world.
Behind me is Nena Aqaba. The work is called Mother Nature. We commissioned her to do something which was related to nature and motherhood, and she created this wonderful installation made out of recycled material, like different sorts of fabrics and wax and resin and hemp. And she is talking in this sculpture about motherhood, about women in Africa fetching water, about fertility as well, about big families which women really have to take care of. This is not only talking about Africa, but also about the idea of recycling material, not using new material for the installation, but found material.
We'll also have a performance by Melody Mousset and Zachary Sharon. Melody Mousset is a very young Swiss artist living here in Los Angeles. She's going to take this whole discourse on climate change and gender onto another level, really the physical level. So she and Zach will do a performance, and the performance will inquire gender roles. It'll also, I think, invite the audience to feel these issues with their own body.
We made this performance thinking about the issues that were developed in the show, but we wanted to maybe use more metaphorical language to express those concerns or issues.
Better than his crown. I think that we sort of culled inspiration from the material that we ran into doing research and sort of learning about the politics around climate change, and then trying to sort of imagine our own attitudes and different people's attitudes to those issues.
Zachary comes from choreography and dance, but as a sculptor, I guess I have a vision that's three-dimensional, so maybe it kind of balance together how you can like deal more with the body, and like I'm more object oriented, and I think it helped to create images. It's not like literal discourse that we're like producing, so I think the performance is successful if the people, if the audience comes out today, you know, keeping some of the images in their mind.
It was a global tour which we started in Europe, then Latin America, right now the United States. And our main goal was to sensitize people. And actually after these 3 years of being in touch with visitors, not only to the show but also to the panels we organized, I really can say that I'm glad and happy and satisfied with the outcome, because we were able to touch people, or the artists were able to touch people, to touch their senses, to impact, to get them into a subject which they might not have been thinking of before.